Welcome to Between Two Servers. Between Two Servers is a podcast that doesn't actually take place between two servers, but talks about everything that exists between two servers. When it comes to any project, project management is an integral part of any process. Figuring out where all the moving parts go, how to structure a project, and where to focus the team's energies on are all huge considerations. I'm Karan, Konverge's social media content producer and videographer. This episode was taken from an Instagram Live recorded earlier in May 2020. Sonia, the Director of Konverge, had a conversation with Madhur, Konverge's project manager, about how he gets the best out of his team, how he manages to juggle multiple projects, what it means to be a project manager, and what it is about being a project manager that he loves so much.
Okay, so let's get started. So I'm super excited to have Madhur with us. He is our project manager, and we're going to talk today. Our conversation is going to be all shop. It's going to be project management, etc. And this is a topic that I really love because I used to do project management.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say I loved it. I kind of did. I have a bittersweet relationship with it, but I do in a way love it. And I think there are so many different things that are part of that role that people are not really aware of. Mm-hmm. And so we want to have a very candid conversation. There is no filter here. There's no wrong or right answers. We're just going to talk about, what it means to be a project manager in a software development company. So with that being said, Madhur, hi, welcome to the Instagram Live. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are as a person on your personal side, not just business. Tell us about it.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much. So here we go. I'm Madhur Bhandari, currently working as project manager in Konverge Digital Solution, as Sonia mentioned. So beside me as a PM, and I'm a part-time, so-called, it's better to say, a bedroom DJ. So I love music, right? So I do play. And I found the right time, right? The COVID-19 situation, everything is crazy, but the music is keeping me busy and keeping me motivated, right? For every day. So that's a different side of me. And but beside being DJ as a PM, it's already 2.5 years. It's almost 3 years. I'm working in Konverge. And that's pretty much it. So yes. Not much, too much engaged with families and yep.
Yeah, so for those who don't know Madhur very much, Madhur has been part of the Konverge family for quite a while now. And he actually, his background, when he came to us, he was a business analyst, and he has grown within the company, and he has now taken over a project management role, which is actually one of the biggest roles for us because, he manages some really large enterprise projects, which we're going to get into in a minute. Before we talk shop, I just want to go back to the comment where you just made, where he's a part-time DJ. So one thing about Madhur, we're kind of like in the same age range. I don't want to say how old we are because, people are going to be like, oh, you guys are old. But I remember one day we were having a social at the office, and Madhur pops over his phone, and he's got like a little speaker, an Alexa speaker, and he starts playing music. And he starts playing like, I don't know how many of you know, like 90s Euro music, which was like the bomb back in the day. And I'm like, whoa. Yo, I didn't even know anyone else listened to this stuff. So I knew him and we were like kindred spirits right there because he loves that kind of music.
Right. Yeah.
And he is our DJ when we do our socials in the office.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm missing a lot, right? So
yeah. So, let's talk about that a little bit. Like we've now been working from home for, oh God, it feels like 1,258 days. It just feels like it's never ending. Tell us a little bit about your process. How has that been for you? Like you're a project manager, you're managing not just one or two projects, you're managing multiple projects, and now you have to do it from home, and you have teams everywhere that you're managing, you have clients everywhere that you're managing. How are you going about that from home? Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your process?
Yeah. So it's not much difference in terms of process working from home or working from office. The first thing is the main difference so far from the positive side of it is, everyone is available for 9 p.m. meeting, right? 9 a.m. meeting. It's right on time. Working from home, that's kind of different that I found, that you don't have to worry about the traffic. You don't have to worry about getting late to your office. All you have to do is prepare yourself for the next day, be there and start your 9 a.m. meeting right away, right? So far, it's not different. The only difference is the virtual world. So the office environment is pretty much virtual, but the work is still real. The dates are real. The projects are still real, right? And there's no change at all. So from a project management perspective, my responsibility is make sure that those projects that we have, that we are currently working in, it has that date, and those dates are made. Those expectations of the client is made at all point, right? So in terms of engagement, luckily we have all the tools. We have all the tools, virtual conversations, or tools like, Zoom, meetings, Skypes, and everything. So it's not challenging. I didn't find much of a difference working from office versus working from home. So there's not much of challenge. But the only challenge that I found, not a challenge from a social connections perspective, I'm missing the bigger part of interacting in a physical world, seeing expression of an individual, just to note that whether individual or the team members, are they stressed because the work is something that I can do based on their body reactions, or those sort of thing is missing, but otherwise it's pretty much the same.
Right.
In terms of client communications and all. So as a PM, I have to frequently update the status of the project to the client, right? So it's kind of like the interactions always, and I'm just back from client meeting as well. So we have this big client called UCDA. We just had a meeting, our meeting with the client. So a frequent meeting with client and frequent updating on what's happening in terms of project perspective, whether we are hitting the deadline or not, if there are some changes, if there's something that needs an additional information from them. This sort of things that's happening. At the same time, making sure that team, even it's a virtual tool, it's not physical contact. We're just making sure that the teams are performing well, right? It's they are still on track. They are not stuck. Or there's no big blockers, which is actually pushing the deadlines or derailing the project kind of thing. So in terms of these activities, I didn't find much of a difference working from office versus working from home. So I'm keeping my pace, and most likely I'm probably being more efficient working from home. There's a reason for why, because you have time. You are saving your time. You're saving your energy. You don't have to spend time on road, right? So that 1 hour, you're not stressed. It frees your mind, right? So it frees your mind, and you can use it in a more productive solution as such.
Right.
So,
but Madhur, just to I don't mean to cut you off, but just a question there. I mean, I know that you used to bike to work every day. How is that affecting you? I mean, that must have been a way for you to exercise, right?
That's a big piece. I'm missing my exercise a lot. Yeah. I started getting my weight, but I have to watch my weight for sure.
So you gain something great, which is you're more efficient, you're working out of your home, you don't have to worry about traffic, but then you're missing that piece of, interacting with people face to face, saying something and not really knowing if they're happy or upset because you don't get the reaction. And then also that travel to work where, I know you biked and sort of got your exercise in for the day to work and from work. So, that's a big deal. That's a big difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference for sure. Yeah, the thing that I missed so far is actually having in-personal interactions and actually see things happening with your eyes, not just using a technology kind of thing, right? And it really makes sense when you are working together as a team, right? So there's kind of team bonding goes, and that's aura thing. Aura is not transferred using technology, right? You have to be physically present on that, and it's a bigger thing. And a company like us, the work from home will not always work. We need to have an office environment, and that kind of environment where we can see things and experience things directly than just working in silo and making things work around. So
I actually just got a really good question, and I actually want to ask it because it's a great one. Rogelio asks, do you think the team's performance is different?
So it definitely depends on individual, how you are as an individual comfortable working from home and how you can make yourself more productive, motivated at all time, right?
Right.
From a project management perspective, it's my role and it's my job to make sure that things are done. That doesn't mean when normally this profession is something, big title, but nobody likes. When it comes to deadline, when it comes to pressure, nobody likes PM, right?
Right.
This is challenging. But me, I need to have those personal, in the person, right? So in terms of your question, Rosario, it's a good question, but it basically, for me, are you doing things right or not? I mean,
right.
if you're having something, it's blocker, be it like mental, be it like from a technology perspective, be it from a requirement. I have to make sure that you are satisfied, your content, you need whatever you wanted, right?
Right.
So those measurements, I have to do it.
Right.
And so far, teamwork is awesome. No doubt on that.
Right.
So the only thing that I'm not able to experience is how you actually feeling inside. Are you happy working all by yourself, or you need something? Those sort of things are all there.
Yeah, everyone's different, right? Everyone reacts different, and everyone works differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, just getting to another point, I mean, you're telling us a little bit about, your restrictions and how strong you are being a project manager. Just for people that are joining us, we're talking about project management role in a software development company sort of environment. And I'm really excited about this conversation because I've done project management. I don't do it anymore, thank God. I mean, I still do product management, which is a little bit different, but I'm going to ask Rogelio, geez, I was reading this in there. Madhur, our project manager, a couple questions. And, I just wanted to bring up, I remember, I always talk to our team about this when a few years ago, I got pulled into a project when it was 2 years in, and I had not been involved in the project at all. And I had to manage this project. And going into it, this project was a complete, it wasn't a disaster, but it kind of was. And, I had to step in to sort of get it back on track, get it, where it needed to be. And I was able to do that. But, I always tell our team, it took everything that I had. It was literally sleepless nights. It was waking up at 2 a.m. to have, this was a global client. Mm-hmm. And they were all over the world, different time zones. And it meant if I had to have a meeting at 2 a.m., I have a meeting at 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. I remember going into the office at 4 a.m. to have a meeting at 5 a.m. Not that I needed to, I could have done it from home, but I just wanted to be there. And it was a project that really, really took a lot out of me. So with that being said, I just wanted to express that because I feel sometimes project management goes, it's a little bit underappreciated, especially I'm in sales, and a lot of times, when I do estimates, we include project management for all of our projects. And sometimes I have clients who are well, can we bring the costs down and can we eliminate the project management? And I'm if you want to eliminate it should not ever be project management. That is one of the most important roles that you need. And I think it's important for people to understand that when you're building a project, it's not just there's a developer sitting at a chair doing the work. There are so many components and moving parts to building software. Mm-hmm. You have a development team, you have business analysts, you have quality assurance, you have graphics. There's so many different people involved. There's architects, and you have to manage all of those different people in addition to managing stakeholders and the clients, right?
Yep.
And sometimes, your team of people and clients and stakeholders, they're not always in one location. Sometimes they're spread out. And I think one of the things that people don't understand is that you need a key person that's sort of like keeping everything together. And we're going to get to you in a sec, Madhur, but I just wanted to point out, like, myself and Roxroy, our development manager, we actually just had a call before this meeting. And one of the things that this is actually a project that we're entertaining and looking at, and it requires like 3 different pieces of technology, 3 sort of completely different projects. There's hardware involved, and there's going to be other teams that are not our team that we have to work with. And that was one of their questions for me today was, how are we going to manage all of these different moving parts to this project? And funny enough, today we're doing this project management thing on IG. And my answer was, that's exactly why there's a project manager on your team. That person is going to be responsible for managing all of those different groups and making sure that, hey, if we're waiting for something from that group in order to get this component done, that person is making sure there's communication with that group, that we're getting what we need in a period of time. And if we're not getting what we need in that period of time, why not? When are we going to get it? When can we expect it? They're sort of the people that are pushing to make sure that, we're getting what we need, so that the end result is the project is on time and on budget. So sort of my question to you now, Madhur, is, I want you to tell me a little bit, because I know this is very challenging. I've done it in the past. It is super hard, but, I want to hear it from you, and obviously a different perspective, but how is it? You're not managing one project. You're not managing 2 projects. You're not managing small projects. You're managing, right now, you have a huge enterprise project that you're managing. We just brought in a new project, and you're also managing a couple of other projects. How do you do that? Like, what's your process for managing all of these different projects and still making sure that they're delivered on time and on budget?
Right. That's a nice question, Sonia, for sure. So I do a lot of dependencies on the tools that I use for my day-to-day activities to manage myself, like to time manage, to see how things are happening, right? So one of the tools I can say, I'm using Microsoft Project Planner. So everything starts with planning, right? So initial planning when we start a project. That planning includes what is an expectation from the client, who are the end users, what is an expectation, what is the date they are expecting, can we deliver something within that time frame. So I gather all these data to put it into my system to get some information, so to see how do we change ourselves, or how do we change some activities within ourselves to reach that goal, right? So that's one of the activities, and it's a key activities. So mostly I rely on that software with a piece of information from piece of data that I got from my internal team as well as from the client, put it into that system, get that result, get that expectations, right? And convey that message to all team, including stakeholders, including client, and be upfront in terms of whether we can achieve that date or not. If not, then what is the reason for it, right? So I use that methodology, I use that communications all time, and same is conveyed to all the teams that is working to complete the project on time. That's the key driver for everything. So day-to-day activities is making sure that things are moving as expected. As you said, rightly said, if it's a bigger project, we have so many moving parts, right? And at times the target keep changing, and I have to keep track of that. When you have the target keep changing, it's very difficult, but we have to manage. We have to use some tools for sure. But in terms of getting information for myself, I do a lot of communications with my internal team, as well as if there is any changes, if there is anything that is required to complete certain tasks, I have to connect. I have to work as a bridge to get that information from the source, right? It could be from the client, it could be from some other SMEs, subject matter expert, right? So most of the time I'll be engaging in all these communications, making sure that nothing is stopping. If the ball is rolling at all time,
Right.
that doesn't mean, okay, I don't have to consider the date. Deadline is key. And at times I have to pressure some groups, some team to get things done where, may not like that approach, but we have to keep client happy because client is everything, right? They have their expectation. They have invested and they are invested to get some benefit out of it. So any delays means it will impact us as well as it will impact client, right?
So to follow up to that, that's a very good point you just made. The reality is sometimes you can't meet the deadline that you set, right? So, I bring that up because that's a very realistic thing that happens.
Exactly.
And sometimes people don't realize, hey, when we start a project with you, this is what we thought and expected, but the project also changed. So our timelines change. How do you manage that with a client? Like, I'm going to assume that they're probably not always happy about it. How do you manage that?
Right. So basically, we normally spend more time in defining the scope, but it's sometimes it's just a paper thing, right? But what's normally happening in the software industry is, okay, so you have requirement document, you have defined the scope. But when clients see certain things, like when they have a visible something, right, in terms of software, something, then most likely there's kind of like new idea coming in. So as a project manager, I have to make sure that any ideas that's coming over down the line, I have to make sure that, this is within the scope, or this is an additional work. Any additional work means change in timeline, right? I have to communicate that message. I use team to make sure that, this is whether this is defined in some document that we agreed to deliver, or this is entirely changed. If it's entirely changed, then I have to go back to the client and then say, Mr. X, sorry, we can do this. It's not that it's not technically possible, but these are the impacts. So there's a time, there's a budget impact. So are you sure you want to take this at this moment, or you can keep it aside, or something like that? So it's kind of like negotiation at all point. It's not like, okay, do whatever I take, right? So this is basically I have to communicate, and so far it's in a way it's comfortable. Things are getting pushed, but client is aware of why it has been pushed, right? At times it's challenging in terms of defining, sticking to the scope thing. Scope keeps changing. The change request is inevitable, right? It keeps coming, but I have to make sure it's tracked and it's properly conveyed to the team as well as to the stakeholders, to the client as well. So anyway, we do manage on that.
Okay, I have a question here that I'm going to ask. I'm trying to get to some of the questions. Are there any skills that working from home have made you focus more on developing in comparison to when you worked from the office?
So it's again, the only advantage of working from home is probably you're not spending time on the road, or you're not stressed out. So you have that extra energy on you to tackle all the problems that you'll face in the day. But in terms of efficiency, if there's a skill, it's pretty much the same. So basically, project manager is not, okay, I have the degree or I have something that I can jump into project management. It doesn't work like that. You have to have an experience in terms of like past experience working on some of this management skill. You have to be people person, understand the situation, know how to tackle the client. So this is again everyday activities, right? You want to get things done on time, but you also have to understand the fact that who you are working with, how they are feeling, what is the expectation. So all those filling gaps. I mean, this normally comes with experience as well, working with individual, understanding individual, right? So, but in general, it's not different. It's not different working from home. It's not different working from the office. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But as I earlier mentioned that things are different when you are face-to-face, when you are in physical presence, right? You can, there's a saying, right? There's the aura thing that works, right? The virtual world, it's different. But when you are physically working with a team, it's completely different. And probably that could be more productive as well. It's not that me as an individual, because it's not just me. I have to work with team, and all the team, everybody needs to be stress-free, fully motivated, so that we are hitting that goal. So I have to make sure. Yeah.
I remember when I first started doing project management, one of my biggest challenges was I was a people pleaser. So I wanted everybody to be happy all the time, and not just, on the client side, but also like on the team and development side. And I was sort of afraid to say no. And I was very timid. And I was like, if someone was upset on the team, I would be like, oh my God, does that mean that all hell's going to break loose? So I had a lot of fear in those early days, but I learned very quickly that you have to have a certain amount of skills to be a project manager. One of those skills is obviously like a great backbone. You can't be afraid to say no. You can't be afraid to hurt people's feelings, even though, it sucks. What are the leadership skills that you think are involved in being a great project manager?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice question again. Yeah, exactly. You need to have...
I have good questions, okay?
Yeah, thick skin. You have to have a thick skin at times, right? So that's the right point. So skill in terms of you as an individual, sometimes it's so difficult to say no to something, right? To no to the request. But it's tricky, but you have to let... your client know, your stakeholder know, I can accept that. But these are the impacts. Are you willing to take? Are you willing to accept it? Right. So that is always there. So you can say yes.
Are your feelings ever hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. It does.
Do you ever go home and cry? Because I remember I did a couple
Too much of pressure. Sometimes too much of pressure. Pressure of delivering things on time, making sure client is happy. And client is everything.
Right.
But it's very challenging at times to keep yourself like it's difficult in a sense, right? So in terms of leadership is basically leadership in terms of how do you communicate with your team members, how do you communicate with your client, right? And how do you make sure that you're making things happening without hurting anyone's feeling, without stressing anyone. And that's a skill that you really need to have. You gotta be a people person and understand their situation, but again, that doesn't mean you be completely completely overwhelmed, and you forgot your responsibility. You forget that there's the other side of the world who's waiting for your outcome.
Well,
right?
I think it's important also to, when you're in a role like that, like a project management role or a leadership role, there has to come a time when you say, okay, when is enough? Like, I care about people's feelings. I want to be conscious to that particular person or that team, but at the same time, you are making decisions that are not only going to impact the project, but are going to impact two other things: the company and the most important thing, the client, right? So it's such a hard place to be in when you're like in a leadership position, because you have to sometimes be the bad guy, right? And you have to say no, and people might not like it, and you're gonna get criticized. But you in your mind, you have to. You've mentioned this a couple of times where you're like, you know what? It is what it is. Like, I got to do what I got to do. At some point, you just got to be like, nope. I'm dropping everything. This is the way it's got to be. I've tried to cater to you. I've tried to do this. Now we're late. We got to get things back on track. And you kind of got to be that bad guy that comes in and sort of just wraps things up and cleans things up, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So it's again it's an everyday challenge for a project manager. So it's not easy. So things changes rapidly, right? But is there a solution?
And you're dealing with so many like different type personality clients, right?
Exactly.
We do work in all different types of industry. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So with multiple projects with multiple different personality type, it's really difficult to keep those things up to date. But do you have an option? No. You have to understand. You have to understand individual, and you have to present the way you should present. That's required by the profession, right? But the key thing is the delivery. Key thing is communications. If it's late, you have to manage. You have to let them know. But yeah, it's kind of difficult in terms of sometimes it's really difficult to make client understand, and it's really challenging.
What happens when they don't? Like, how do you get around that? Because I think that's one of the most difficult things. You can communicate things to your team. Those are people that are in front of you and you see every day. They sort of know you. They sort of know your personality. But what happens when you're trying to convey something to a client who's your client and you need to keep happy and they're just not understanding? How do you deal with that?
Okay, this is a little bit tricky questions for sure, I think. But in general, so depends. So if it's sometimes there is a confusion. Okay, so the expectation changes, although it was expected something different, but things go change. I mean, the date change, target change, or expectation keeps changing, right? And there comes a point, right, where things there is kind of like a bit of disagreement within the client,
right?
But you have to convince. You have to try to convince. But if they are not convinced, we have to find a solution to either, okay, let's take that on our own and let's fulfill that client's expectation, because
right.
Again, we don't want to lose. We don't want to make client unhappy. So there are times when the disagreement between client and us is getting broader. We normally take that heat. We normally take that kind of approach to calm down, to bring it to that discussion and agreement. There are cases like, okay, I've given a recent case. We recently released a software for user acceptance testings, and everything was fine until one day the client comes and say, hey, I requested for this feature, it's not there, and I have to review with the team, I have to review the document, but then it was not there. So I try to convince my client saying, okay, this is not part of the requirement, but it needs to be built. But there's kind of then say, not a direct no, not a direct in agreement, but I know the client is very valuable for us, so we don't want to lose anyone. So I say, okay, fine. I went to my boss. I say, okay, this is the situation. Can you help me out? And there you go. There you have a solution. Now the client is super happy. There's willingness. So it really depends on situation and the way you tackle with client. And not every time we'll take all those heat. Not every time we'll put things from our pocket. They have to realize as well. But
right.
One or two examples will always help in long-term relationship with the client. And probably we don't have to face those disagreements in the future. So
right.
It's pretty much situational, but way you manage those stuff.
Right. Do you think that, at the end of the day, the client sees the value in having a project manager manage their project?
I definitely say yes to this, because the thing is communications, visibility to what's happening, right? And who will provide that from the organization? It's a project manager who is providing all the visibility, what is happening, what you are expecting, what you are getting, when you are getting. So all those visibility, all this information, who are providing? It's project manager. And how project manager is handling all these grievances or the differences, right? So at the end of the project, for sure, they must, if originally they didn't agree on having project management, later in the project, they'll definitely realize and
right.
they'll definitely understand the value of having project managers.
Right.
And just understand the situation when things get delayed and what happens if there's no project manager. And I mean, it'll get more delayed than having a project manager, right?
So the follow-up to that, like I've seen this a lot where some development companies will not have a project manager on staff at all, and instead they will use like a team lead to manage the project. What do you think the difference is there?
Okay, so basically those skill set that we have discussed about. So team leads from the developer perspective, the perspective will differ, right? So basically, how do you make your client convince? Showing some codes, showing some unvaluable information that client is not capable of understanding. That's
so
the major
you mean like
difference. Technical stuff, right? So it should not be technical. It should speak from the business side. It should be more business related, more business information they're expecting, right? So I'm not saying it's completely wrong to have a lead, but not all the time it'll work for sure, because there are process, there are things, there are information which needs to be put in differently, which is more understandable by the client itself, right? So it may work, but probably, you have some reason on that.
I agree with you. I have worked with vendors that don't have project managers, and you can see right away, it's a project that's a lot more challenging to manage, because you don't have that business person on the other side sort of monitoring all the different areas, but you have a very technical person who's talking to you, about technology, about the tools, and you're kind of like, great, I love that, but I just want to know when my project's going to be delivered, right?
Exactly.
So I do agree with you where there's like a value to having like a PM. So with that being said, we're running out of time here, but I just want to ask you, what is one of your favorite things about being a project manager? What do you enjoy the most?
Oh yeah, okay. Interesting questions. I have to think about that, right? So basically from the project management, I like to work with team. I like to manage things, and it's not always interesting to I should not be using that word, but I would rather say I'm a people person for sure. I love to work with team, and again, IT industry is always my passion. Although I switched from development activities to a business analyst to project management, I know those pain. I know all those. I have those experience kind of thing, which is really helping me out to be to improve myself in terms of project management responsibility. But that would be the key thing.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question to that, because you just made a really good point. So, you have a development background, you have a business analyst background, and now you're a project manager. Do you think that, if you hadn't had that background experience, do you think you would be the same type of project manager? And if not, what would be the differences?
Okay, yeah. So, so when you have relevant experience in the area that we're working, right? So we are talking about project management in the IT world, right? So those past experience, being a developer, being a BA, right? It always helps in terms of understanding the situation, right? Because project manager, you have to understand, you have to make sure that it's rightly estimated. Or if your team comes with some challenges, if you don't have those understanding, probably there is kind of like a conflict situation may come, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of thing. But when you have an experience, you can always see from the different side, right? It's not just from a project perspective, but see from a different side, being on that individual shoe and understand whether this is right or wrong. So all those analysis that we can do in that process will definitely work based on your experience, past experience. That doesn't mean not having those experience will not work. It will still work, but maybe there you have to tackle some more situations out there, right? You might have to go through some of those rough process to confirm yourself in this work, right? So it's not like in your construction, you're on a construction PM. This is an IT. IT is different than in our other regular PM activities.
Right.
So having knowledge works, but I would not say not having those past experience or coming from that background will fail at all time. No, definitely.
Okay. No,
so there's a trade-off between,
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a huge value to, especially understanding the development world. We're not talking about just IT and managing servers. We're talking about building enterprise software applications from scratch. And I don't think that a lot of people really value the work that goes behind the scenes to build these applications.
Exactly.
You know, we get so used to now just, downloading an app, logging in, and it does everything that we needed to do. Or we log in at work into a software system that the company wants us to use, and we learn how to use it, and boom, 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 go, 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 right? But the work that is behind the scenes to build those applications is
it's massive. Right.
Massive.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think that people 100% appreciate and understand what goes behind it. I mean, just using it in an example, we do custom software. So clients will come to us and be like, oh, I want you to build me this type of application. And then another client will come to us and says, I want you to build this type of application. And they're completely different. And we now have to step in and say, okay, we have to understand the client's requirements and how in their head they're sort of imagining how this thing is going to work. And then it's our job to pick the client's brain and document everything that we get out of their brain.
Right.
And then once we document it, we then have to go back and make sense of it all. And then once we do make sense of it all, comes the real challenging part, which is, how do we apply technology to this now? How do we build it? What are the right tools? What's the right technology? Oh, this client security is a big issue for them. Okay, so how can we build the source code and the application in a way that is going to complement the client and his needs or her needs? You know what I mean? So there's so much that happens behind the scenes that I don't think is actually really understood. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because it's a really good time to talk about some of the pains that a project manager goes through, because I just want to point out, the business analysts, they do the business analysis. The developer does the source code. The architects. The QA person tests. They do QA, they test the application. The project manager technically does a little bit of all that, right? Because, you're not doing the requirements, but the client is talking to you about the requirements, so you have to understand those requirements.
Right.
Which means you have to be part of the process of sort of developing those requirements, right?
Yeah.
And then when you finally release this thing to the client, and let's say what we call in our world, they find a bug, which means something is not working properly. They don't go to our QA team and say, I found the bug. They call the project manager and says, hey, I was trying to do this and this came up. It's a bug. And now you have to try and understand the bug so that you can communicate it to the team so that they can try and replicate it and fix it. So it's such a challenging job, because you're basically doing a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
You're a business analyst, you're a project manager, you're a coder, you're a QA, and you're also running a business, because a project is like running a business. This is something that's going to be impacting our client's business. So that's really what it is, right?
Exactly.
And it's so challenging, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to chat about it and kind of go through your pains of being a project manager, and sort of talk to our listeners about the benefits of having a project manager on your team, especially when you're building software applications, whether it's custom software or product development, which are two very different things. And before we go, let's talk about that a little bit, because that's something that you do. Like, not only are you doing project management for us, but we are a company that also builds products, and at the same time you're also doing product management. So tell us a little bit about what you think the difference is there, because there is a bit of a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference. So basically, project management is basically you're managing clients' expectation, right? So all you have to do is understand what they're looking for, what's their business is like. So product is different. What works? You have to understand what works and what does not. What is the key thing that drives your product to success, right?
Right.
So it's a completely different scenario. Given an example of Menusano. So Menusano, one of our products, right? So
yeah.
we have to change from version A to version B. But the question is, you already have version A. What is the value of having version B, right? That's a challenge.
Great question.
So that you have to analyze why my stakeholders investing on this. What is the value they're trying to create here? So this sort of analysis is required being a product manager, right? It's more challenging from a product perspective, but from a project perspective, it's different. When you have all set, then it's kind of like easy in terms of management. You're working with team, but product is a different set of work. It's completely different. You are making sure that your product is success in the market. You're getting what you're expecting, right? And it's completely different.
Yeah, and there's also a continuous work in product where, like one example with Menusano, which is a great example. When we built it and then we decided to update it, and instead of updating it, we actually decided to completely rebuild it. And you're right, we had to look at, what is the value of rebuilding the upgrade, and what's the cost, and what's the value for the investor who's going to pay for this, and what are the benefits to the product of redeveloping it. So we knew what the benefits were. We wanted to build it in new technology that was going to be around for the next 20-50 years. But, another thing was like, once we did build it and you managed that process, you managed the developers, I was one of the stakeholders there. So I was sort of like the client. And, like once we built it and we launched it, we're like, crap, it's not over. We thought it was over. We're like super excited.
Right. Yeah.
We launched the product.
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh man, like we're getting so much feedback, and people are asking us, hey, have you thought about this scenario, and could you build this type of functionality, and this would be really valuable for my business if you could build this feature. And then like by the end of it, like 2-3 months in, we had like a roadmap of future features that we could potentially build. And that's another thing when you're doing product management, right? Like there's a roadmap that you have to consistently monitor. And you also have to determine in that roadmap, what is the most valuable feature here that I'm willing to invest in that's going to give me a return on my investment, right? So you can have a list of 20 features and be like, okay, I could build all of these 20 to keep my clients happy, which is amazing. We want to keep our clients happy, but we don't have budget to do all of that. So what is the one thing that is going to make all of our clients really happy, is going to bring value to their business, but is going to give us that return on investment, right? Because we're taking a gamble building all these features.
Right.
And so you're hoping for a return on that. I mean, with Menusano, we've been very fortunate because we've built things out slowly. We've listened to our clients, and we've sort of taken that approach where we're waiting for a feature to be requested more than a couple of times before we say, okay, like, when you have 50 people asking you for the exact same thing, then there's value in that feature. So we're sort of like, we're working with our existing clients to sort of figure out what is going to be needed next. With custom software, it's very different. It's more of the approach of, this is what we need, this is what we want you to build. Once it's built, it's done, we deploy it and we use it. And they don't really think about What's next? Can we upgrade? Should we upgrade? Do we need to consistently maintain and support this application, which is something like a lot of people don't think about, right? When you're done building software, you're never done building software.
Right.
I want to really emphasize on that, and I want to make it a really good point. You're never done. So anybody out there who's looking to have software built and you think it's going to, you have an application that's going to take a year, it's not. It's a continuous thing that you have to, it's a living, breathing thing that you have to maintain. It's like a child. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to grow. And as it grows, it's going to go from diapers to clothing, and you're going to have to upgrade its wardrobe. So it's sort of that, there's so much, sorry, I just got distracted. I read somebody's comment where it says, true, software is a living beast. Yes, I love that expression. It is a beast.
Exactly.
And it's so funny because we live in a world now where technology is so accessible. And, I remember a couple of years ago where, you had a phone and it got upgraded like every 2 years, every year. And, using the phone as an example, now I feel like they're coming out with new phones like every month. Just when I go out and buy the newest iPhone, another freaking iPhone comes out. And I'm like, oh my God, I just can't keep up with this technology. And that's sort of like what happens when we're building software. Technology is changing. And the software application needs to be able to keep up, right? And that also includes the tools that we build the software on, right? So for example, we do a lot of like .NET, Sharp on SQL Server. Well, that technology also gets upgraded, and we have to continuously, if an application is built on an older version, at some point you're going to want to upgrade because you want it to not be slow performance, and you want it to, you want to get in there, do what you got to do, and it's working perfectly. The more you let it go, the worse and the more outdated it's going to get, right? And it's so interesting because, like, as a project manager, these are the things that you're thinking about, and these are the things that you sort of have to, convey to your client and say, hey, like, have you thought about this? But then the client's like, no. I just want to build this thing and I'm done, right? So it's such a challenge, right?
Yeah, definitely. So beside so the technology, it's also driven by the business, your own business, right? So if your business is evolving, definitely some software that you are using needs to be evolved. So it actually ties up with your business if you're using that software for business, right? So you cannot have same working software, same process at all time. So it should evolve. So in that sense, yes. But the frequency may change based on industry, right? Some industry requires frequent changes. Other industries, okay, we are slow, we're picking up, it's working for us. We have a client who is working using Excel and Access till date, but it does make sense because it's working for them. But when you expand, when you have a team who can support that, right? Then that causes like a bit of problem to the business, and it's that kind of business push requires to change the software from a technology perspective.
Right.
But it's not like stagnant. I'm done. It'll not work like that. So it's living. It's living.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, this was such a great chat. I really, really enjoyed it. I have to say this is one of my favorites because I do love project management, and I've been excited about this. And just so everyone watching, Madhur was like, we had to pull his hair to do this because he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And look at him now. He's like a pro. So thank you. Thank you for doing this and walking us through your project management journey a little bit. I'm sure we're going to have lots more chats. I mean, I have like a million questions in my head now, and we could like go on for another hour, but we're not going to because people are going to be like, what the heck? But this was so fun. And I hope you and everyone watching can stay tuned. We're going to have lots more of these chats with, our team and guests about technology, about startups, about journey, about life, about mental health. We're sort of talking about a little bit of everything, because right now the world is going crazy.
Yeah.
And everything is up for grabs. There's no restrictions. And I really love that we're making this a platform where there's no wrong answer. It's just people's perspective of a role, of a business, of whatever it is that they do. So thank you for joining us. I hope you will stay tuned and join us again. Thank you, Madhur, for coming on.
Thank you.
I hope you will do this again.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Between Two Servers. You can find us over on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. The links are in the description of this podcast. Thanks again for taking the time to listen to Between Two Servers, and we'll catch you next time.